You're very welcome back to Daniel Hussey's Sport, covering sport from an Irish perspective. Really appreciate all the comments, kind messages from the last episode. We're going to take you through the sporting weekend from an Irish point of view. A little bit more snappier than previous week. I have listened to some of you in terms of nailing topics, maybe not as many topics, so I won't include everything. There's obviously a lot of GA county finals to get through, but we'll be covering a fair bit within the next few minutes. So Leinster, Munster headlines that, bit of Premier League, League of Ireland, and we've got an any other section with a lot of stuff to cover. But let's start with Croke Park. And I do feel we saw a bit of a seismic moment in Irish rugby for the last 3, 4, 5 years. Beyond that, I would say, but particularly those years, Leinster have absolutely dominated club rugby, both Ireland, England, and European as well. And they just haven't managed to get over the line when it comes to a European trophy. And it did feel a bit of a moment that Leinster's fall off, at least, obviously, very small sample size, given we've only just started the season. But how last season finished onto this season, it does seem a bit of a big moment in Irish rugby. And it's a microcosm of the last couple of weeks. As I mentioned, Leinster had that tough start in South Africa. Prendergast had a tough start in particular. And it was basically billed this weekend as Crowley versus Prendergast in terms of the number 10 slot. And there was only one winner there. So more of that Irish 10 chat in just a second. But on the actual club season itself, before we get on to Ireland, Munster have such a massive lead over Leinster right now. If you see the table, Munster on 19 points, tied with Stormers, and Leinster all the way back 6 points through 4 games. Leinster have lost 3 games in the URC. There's some seasons they wouldn't even lose 3 games. So there is that question, very early I know, but have they missed their opportunity to win big in their dominance era? They went into this game 16-point favourites and ended up losing by 17 points, 33-point swing on that. It's in that context, points alone, one of the biggest shocks in rugby, just given how much Munster won by. And when Leinster went 7-0 up, I think it went into the 20s in terms of what people expected to happen, or the markets did. So yeah, quite a seismic result, I think. And those small couple of defeats, I think it's been coming from Leinster. And yeah, it's just a massive shock. And onto the Irish number 10 situation in particular. Crowley's got the driving seat for Ireland. It's a massive November for Andy Farrell and getting this decision right. I think prior to the game, maybe he was going to go 2 games Sam Prendergast, 2 games Jack Crowley, number 10. I think Jack should be playing in 3 at least, and Prendergast maybe in the other one. And on the debate, because we've had so much talking about it, even last week I spoke about Prendergast, likening him to Trent Alexander-Arnold and his defending versus his tackling. And is that a quick fix? I don't think so. If you haven't managed to nail it, teams are going to target him. But even looking at Ireland, right, I think Jack Crowley starting for 60, 70 minutes and then Prendergast coming on is quite a decent solution to the out-half problem, per se. But yeah, going on to Andy Farrell, I think there is massive questions in terms of how he's handled it, how quickly he promoted Prendergast, which forced the hand of Leo Cullen to get Prendergast starting. Obviously, the likes of Harry Byrne had to go off to Bristol for a year. He's come back, looked very well, albeit again, small sample size, given it was only 1 game. But yeah, there's a lot going on with this number 10 situation and this Leinster domination situation in terms of having 21 of the 34 players in the current Irish squad. So that's 21 players from Leinster, 13 for Connacht, Ulster, and Munster. So like, he sort of pushed himself and wanted to make Ireland a club side similar to Leinster. And when you do that, and Leinster are going very well, look, over the last few years, no one's had really any issue, bar maybe a few Munster fans. But when you continue to ignore the odd Munster player, like Tom Farrell, for example, and then you end up with a squad situation that's dominated by Leinster, and suddenly Leinster start losing, and suddenly some of your decisions aren't looking great. Yeah, I'd be quite worried about this November window, and particularly given we've got New Zealand to start off with. So it's going to be an interesting month. He's already named a squad. I think the squad would have been different, even though it's only 1 game, if he'd named it after this game. But obviously they're flying out to Chicago, which is going to be a great occasion. Very interested to see that result. And then 3 games in the Aviva. It's Japan, Australia, and then the big one against South Africa. So it's a massive November, because I tweeted this out if you want to check it. But on the World Cup and what age all our players are going to be in the 2027 World Cup, it does seem quite an aging squad, or at least that starting 15 seems to be an aging starting 15. So I'm fascinated what's going to happen there, but we will see. massive turning point, I think. And just in that dynamic between Leinster and Munster, because Munster for so long, they obviously had that famous Aviva win a few years ago in the URC semi-final against Leinster and ended up winning the URC. That seemed against the head. This one very much seemed like this team have arrived. So huge win. Fair play, Munster. It's given us a competitive season to look forward to, but I think the stuff in terms of the Irish squad with that number 10, what's going to happen, I'm quite fascinated by that. But shout out to Ulster. Managed to get a bonus point win, massive for them. And even looking at the table, for example, they've only played 3 games. They've won all 3, bonus points in each of them. So they're going well. And Connacht, they'd be disappointed losing to the Bulls, but solid enough start. I know 1 win, 2 defeats, but they are on 8 points. So it doesn't feel like they've won 1, lost 2. They obviously have that game in hand as well as Ulster for the postponements with the Storms last week. So hopefully we can see more competitive between the 4 provinces, and then the Irish team gets picked with the 4 provinces in mind, because I think at the moment there's too much short-termism for this Irish team. And like at the end of the day, we've never gone past the quarterfinal in the World Cup. I accept we were very unlucky in the 2023 World Cup, and Farrell deserves another crack at it, but he's got to deliver, and there's got to be more to. Let's not just throw all our eggs in winning every single game, like between now and the World Cup, 6 Nations, November International. Let's try a few things. Let's try and nail the out half situation, etc., etc. Yeah. So fascinating stuff in the rugby world. We'll move on to League of Ireland. And for last 2 weeks, I've been on Ireland AM covering sports on a Friday morning, and I've gone, Shamrock Rovers need 1 point to win the league. And we've made a joke of that, saying, that's great. Surely they'll do it this week. And they haven't. And it's sort of like, I mean, the league is done, don't get me wrong. So I'm going to qualify the next 30 seconds of your time. So feel free to stick on something else or skip forward, sorry. But Derry, basically, if they beat Shamrock Rovers, and I went for a realistic score like 3-0, okay, which isn't realistic, I accept. Say they did somehow, because they host Rovers on Friday. They beat Shamrock Rovers 3-0 on Friday. Rovers lose their next 2 home games 1-0, albeit I think it's Galway, Waterford. Then Derry on the final day against a Cork City team that will have the kids out because they'll be preparing for an FAI Cup final the following week. If they somehow manage to win 5-0, then Derry City somehow will be champions of the league. So very unlikely. It is like literally 0.01%, but I'm saying there is some permutations that backed it up. So I just thought that was fun to write that out. It took me a lot longer than you would think trying to work that out with my brain on Saturday morning, but I did. But the more realistic story in the league, to be fair, is the battle for Europe. Bows will be very disappointed. I mean, if we look at the table right now, you can see that Derry City are second. They're looking very likely, obviously, given they're pushing for the league, that they will have one of the European spots. And that just leaves basically Shells 5 points clear of Bows. Bows have that game in hand on Monday night at home to Pats. I'm actually going there myself, so very much looking forward to that. If Bows win that, it will come down to those final 2 games. And in terms of the fixture, Bows are hosting Shells on the penultimate day of the season. If they win that, they'll be in pole position. If Shells get a draw, they'll be in pole position for that 3rd spot. And Bows are away to Drogheda with Shelburne at home to St. Pat's. So there's a lot going on. And of course, if Pats manage to upset the apple card, they'll potentially still have an outside chance, given that they're playing Shells to push into that top 3. So that is where the League of Ireland is realistically you're looking at in terms of that battle for Europe, but also, of course, still that outside chance of champions not being Shamrock Rovers, but highly unlikely, to be fair. Incidentally, Stephen Bradley is running the Dublin Marathon on the Sunday of the banker and then heading straight up to Derry. So raising money for his son's charity. So that's just a great story. Josh Bradley, of course, getting the all clear from cancer. So brilliant story. And look, Rovers expecting them to win the league, potentially a historic double as well, and kick on in Europe too. So maybe just a hiccup in terms of where they are just the last couple of games. And obviously the battle for that final relegation spot or relegation playoff spot between Waterford, Sligo and Galway United is seemingly going down to the wire as well. Don't want to spend too long in the Premier League. You can get your Premier League content. There's a lot of it out there. And I am, as we get on, try and give it from an Irish perspective. But this week, look, there was a lot going on. We got Ange Postecoglou. I mean, I'm watching the Nottingham Forest Chelsea game. I've seen 2 empty seats in the director's box. And within 18 minutes of the full-time whistle, they sack Ange Postecoglou. Going away from Nuno and then bringing someone in like Ange, I think you got to do that in pre-season if you really are serious about trying to back his football. But on the other hand, from Ange's point of view, he's coming mid-season. I thought he would just try and work with that back 4 or back 5. Sometimes they played. Look, build on that defensive record. Build on the fact they don't concede from set pieces. Get yourself hard to beat again. And then bring your football in through that. But he just wanted to turn it into this Ange ball, and they were just too open in the back. But 39 days or whatever it was, the second shortest stint, I think, as Premier League manager behind Sam Allardyce. It's a crazy statistic, yeah. And it's a mess what their Forest have done there now in terms of where they go next manager. I've seen them linked from anyone from Mancini to Sean Dyche and everyone in between. So bit of a wild stuff. And if you're a Nottingham Forest fan, it's just a frustrating time to be supporting your team, just given how you had such a good thing going under Nuno last year, albeit they did overperform with expected goals, etc. there. But yeah, just recording this around 7 o'clock Sunday, Manchester United have gone to Anfield and beaten them for the first time, I think, in 10 years. But an incredible result, absolutely incredible result. Liverpool did have chances, to be fair. Like, it's a weird game to sort of analyse, but for Amarin, probably his biggest win in his reign, and he's gotten a lot of stick for sticking with his system. I mean, he's going down with the ship is the sort of attitude. And look, at the start of the season, obviously the low point being Grimsby. I think last season was absolute shambles. He has managed to bring some of his players, Cunha and Remo. They did look decent on the counter-attack. I would qualify this by saying, look, under Ole Gunnar in particular, some of United's best performances came away from home with the counter-attack. That's what Amarin's produced there today. I want to see him do that week in, week out at home in terms of this formation. I struggle to see this back five working at home to a team that you need to break down, but promising signs, obviously. And with Liverpool, there's a lot going on there. Isak, Mo Salah both taken off when looking for a goal. Isak probably not fit or up to speed from pre-season. Salah hasn't hit the same heights as last season. So a few question marks in Liverpool. Arsenal obviously got a 1-0 win. At times nervy, at times comfortable. It was one of those weird ones. They are in pole position for the league, but even Manchester City getting back with Erling Haaland scoring a couple of goals, it seems they could be the team that pushes Arsenal this year. So there's a lot going on in the title race, potentially a three-way battle. Maybe one or two other teams might get into it, but a lot going on as always in the Premier League. Thought it was notable that Thomas Frank's Spurs seem to be struggling. I mean, they get into a great position, 1-0 up in Villa, managed to lose that 2-1, and they just never looked like getting an equaliser in that last 20 minutes. Just never at least had the ball for long spells in the Villa half. So thought they were very disappointed. And the two teams of the season for me, Crystal Palace versus Bournemouth. If you haven't yet, watch the 3-minute highlights on YouTube of this game. Absolutely brilliant. Bournemouth started so well. We're top of the league as it stood. But Crystal Palace, Mateta hat-trick, having not scored in ages in the league. It was just a brilliant, brilliant game of football between two quality managers who've stamped their style of play on the clubs. And when we talk about Amarin, how long it's taken, these two managers have gone in, slow start in fairness to them, 8-10 games, and then they start playing the way the team wants to play. So fascinating to see how those teams go this season and where they may go in terms of bigger clubs. But yeah, I was watching the Celtic versus Dundee game, and you have to say you've got to be worried for Celtic. I mean, Rangers and Russell Martin have taken all the headlines in terms of the Scottish Premiership this season. But like Brendan Rodgers comments, like they lose 2-0 away to Dundee. He goes, you can't drive a Honda Civic like a Ferrari. The goals and speed have gone out of our team, and I need to try and find the way to get it back or try and get results. And you're looking at Hearts, who won 3-0 away to Kilmarnock on Saturday evening, and they've got a bit of a 5-point gap in terms of the league. It does seem we have a bit of a title race on our hands. So again, fascinating to see how that goes. But it's not necessarily Rangers versus Celtic. It's Celtic versus Hearts. And for those that don't know, Tony Bloom, who's involved in Brighton, really shrewd individual. He's involved in this Hearts project only from the summer as well. So he's set his sights on a top two finish this year, and already they seem to exceed in that. They don't have Europe this season either, and I just think that'll be a big factor because Celtic and Rangers are obviously still going in the Europa League. A little bit on the golf. Watched this Sunday the India Championship. Shane Lowry, for the Irish perspective, tied third. Managed to birdie 18 to get himself third place. So fair play to him. And Rory McIlroy, ultimately disappointed at tied 26. Obviously, that come down after the Ryder Cup. But Tommy Fleetwood, man, like to build a CV like he has over the last couple of months, just given the narrative was 0 PGA Tour wins. It's gone from that narrative to he's won the FedEx Cup with the Tour Championship in the same event, but then managed to get the India Championship, and all of a sudden you can bring his worldwide wins into fruition, and suddenly that CV's looking more like where Tommy Fleetwood's career should be. So I just thought it was great stuff from Tommy, and he's just a good guy to root for. So we touched on it last week in terms of the DP World Tour. It's going to be a fascinating race to buy over the next few weeks, and hopefully we see Rory in action as well as some of the big guns like Shane, Tommy too. On to GA news. Before just briefly touch on a couple of GA county finals, do want to mention the Tips senior football manager, Philly Ryan, passed away there on Saturday evening. I mean, this is just a tragic tragic story. He underwent hip surgery in May, but managed to get himself back on the sidelines. And he was on crutches for Tip's final game of the year, which was the Tailteann Cup defeat to Leitrim. So I just thought it was a terribly sad story hitting my phone on Saturday evening. Puts everything in perspective. Thoughts, obviously, with the family and friends of Philly Ryan. So there's no proper segue, to be fair, to go from that to county finals. I don't want to spend too long in terms of, there's so many of them, but I wanted to cover three. I mean, Sarsfield's winning the Cork Hurling Championship, managed to get a great win. Obviously, Ballybowden was on Dublin football, beating Athena. This was playing Saturday night after the Munster Leinster game, and because TG Carr showed that game, basically they showed the Ballybowden game, and also it meant the kickoff got delayed to 8:15. So very late finish in Parnell Park, but Bowden got a win. And it does show where Dublin football's going over the last few years. It does seem a lot more of those super clubs or urban clubs have managed to build out, and they've just so many players. And you see that with the likes of Bowden, Athena, and Chemical Crokes competing in both football and hurling. And massive win. So credit to Ballybowden there. And the Mayo football final ended up going to a replay, which I thought was quite good. So in the years or seasons of finishing on the day, we still managed to get a replay in the Mayo County football final. So there was a lot going on there. Before we conclude, again, the swimming, I didn't expect to be talking swimming so long, but I do want to touch on Shane Ryan in just a second. But before I do, mentioning Ellen Walsh and Mona McSherry both winning medals at the World Cup Aquatics. Absolutely fantastic for them to build on some of the Olympic success they both had, or at least Mona McSherry in particular, but also Ellen Walsh competed very well as well. To see them representing Ireland, continuing their, I mean, Mona, but there was talk she might retire from the sport, definitely doesn't look like that. So shout out to the two of them. But also, the minute I finished recording Shane Ryan, I'd say yesterday, and wishing him well, or sorry, last week, and wishing him well in retirement. Obviously, he's now taking part in the World Enhanced Games. Look, from the point of view of money, you can see it's night and day between what he could earn and what he might earn here with the Enhanced Games. But obviously, there's that safety issue. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, I don't think he's like a drug cheater or anything like that, because he's never cheated in his life up until then. But at the same time, it's a tough one to try and support. Like, I say fair play to him for coming out and doing loads of interviews. He seems to try and get ahead of this story. And look, I understand when there's money in front of someone, they might be persuaded to join something like the World Enhanced Games. But I think people have called it a freak show and stuff like that. And I know some people then, as a result, might get a tad offended by that sort of term. But it's hard to try and describe it in any other terms. Like, it is just a bit of a mess. It's a bit of where sport is going. It's Donald Trump Jr. involved. It's in America. I won't be watching it. I don't support it at all. I don't think, like, I do think Shane Ryan probably has ruined his legacy as a result there. But at the same time, look, there's a lot of money at stake. So you can see why someone like him would be tempted. So that was pretty much it from the weekend. Obviously, a lot of stuff we missed out on. Actually, one thing I completely forgot to mention, and I had it written down in our League of Ireland, is shout out to Athlone Town, won the double with a 3-2 win as well. Massive result for them, and great to see them competing in Europe this season. Hopefully they can kick on next season as well. That match was played in Tala. But yeah, thanks a mil for watching. Enjoy the week sports. I'll be actually on Ireland Day on Monday morning, so this is tomorrow morning as I record. But if I'm not chatting to you then, I will chat to you next Sunday. If you can, I purposely left this to the end. Take 2 seconds, hit that like button. Helps the content get out to a wider audience and be much appreciated. And if you haven't subscribed already, if you subscribe for free, again, it would be much appreciated. But until then, I'll chat to you next week. Bye-bye.